It is very easy to stand behind a microphone and tell people, "Oh Muslims, be one unit. Oh Muslims, form a single row. Do not divide." Words and theories are easy.
But what happens when these ideal words crash into the complex, messy reality of human nature? The Prophet, peace be upon him, did not present the unity of Muslims as a dry piece of information or an impossible fantasy scenario. He stepped down into the real world, faced massive storms and obstacles, and drank heavily from a cup named the bitterness of patience.
Welcome back. The unity of the community of believers is a matter of core faith that a Muslim can never deviate from. When the Prophet commanded sticking to the congregation of believers and their leader, he said, "And whoever deviates into the fire." Therefore, we are not talking about a secondary duty, but a component of faith itself. But Revelation did not live in a fantasy world. In practical application, the Prophet faced massive, terrifying obstacles. He faced fierce tribalism, the superiority complex of free men over slaves, the arrogance of the rich over the poor, the patriarchal bias of society against females. And he faced the tribal elders and chiefs demanding privilege over the youth and children. Yet, despite all this human chaos, he continued to treat, heal, and endure with beautiful patience. Imagine the sheer social and political pressure the Prophet faced. The great chiefs of the tribes, like Al-Aqra ibn Habis and Uyayna ibn Hisn, came to him. They looked with absolute disdain at the poor companions like Salman al-Farsi, Suhaib al-Rumi, and Habab ibn al-Arat. They told the Prophet, "Make a special sitting for us, where these poor people do not sit with us. We are the leaders of the people and the chiefs of the tribes, and our status does not allow us to sit with these slaves and beggars." Do you think this was an easy situation? It was a massive political and social pressure to win over the hearts of tribal leaders. But a grand, decisive Quranic rebuke descended to settle the issue and cement the row of the believers. وَلَا تَطْرُدْ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Why do not send away those who call upon their Lord morning and afternoon, seeking His countenance. Allah is greatest. Revelation triumphed for the sincere poor, and established that the only scale of closeness is righteousness, not nobility or money. Today, as we recover the major landmarks of our religion, including the unity of our rows, we must understand completely that we are not just taking this as dry information. We must not be unrealistic or overly romantic about a perfect reality. We must know that we have to get used to a heavy bitterness, the bitterness of patience. Muslims have division among them. They have differences. They have variations. The fact that Islam made unity mandatory does not mean we will jump a magical leap to achieve the result in a single second. It is impossible. It means we will take steps and degrees and we will learn how to swallow the bitterness of extreme patience. We will endure, and we will excuse one another in matters where excuses are acceptable, and we will be soft-hearted and broad-minded with one another until we reach this goal. The obstacles to achieving this unity come in many shapes, colours, and forms. But here, a critical question arises. If we must be patient with the personal flaws and mistakes of Muslims, who exactly belongs inside this row? What are the boundaries of this row that can never be crossed? Where does a personal dispute end, and where does abandoning the community begin? That is what we will learn in detail in the next episode.